Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivardhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Jayo Jagannath, Jayo Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Shubhadra. Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. With that, go to Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. And we will continue reading on from Srila Prabhupada Lila Amrita. The chapter title is I Will Build a Wonderful Temple for You. After the first appearance at Chaupati, Radha Rasa Vihari had moved to the Akash Ganga building, where gradually the devotees had established a decent standard of deity worship. When Prabhupada had left orders that Radha Ras Bihari should move to Juhu as soon as a down payment was made, some of the devotees had questioned him. Why should the deities move before the facilities were proper? Shouldn't they wait until the temple was built? Once a deity is installed on a piece of property, Prabhupada had replied, no one will remove them. More than anyone else, Prabhupada was aware of the proper worship to be offered to Radharas Bihari, but his emphasis now was on securing the land. How else, he reasoned, could he eventually give Radharas Bihari a royal throne and temple, unless they themselves first established their right of proprietorship by taking up residence at Hare Krishna land? The arrival of Radharas Bihari at Juhu also meant increased difficulties for the devotees, who now had to struggle to maintain the morning puja and cook 6 daily offerings in the meager kitchen. Even Radharas Bihari's tent was insubstantial and swayed in the wind. Srila Prabhupada, however, saw the move as a necessary transcendental tactic. He felt certain that everyone involved, himself, the owners of the land, and the Bombay municipality, would accept that the land belonged to Krishna, since Krishna was already residing there. And because he was asking Lord Krishna himself to accept these inconveniences, he prayed to the deity, my dear sir, please remain here, and I shall build a beautiful temple for you. By the time Prabhupada returned to Bombay, Radharas Bihari were installed on the stage of the festival pandal. Attendance at the festival was not as great as it would have been in downtown Bombay. No more than 500 people came a night, but Prabhupada was satisfied. The festival on their own property, and this was only the beginning. Every evening, Prabhupada lectured at the pandal and attended the Kirtan and Aarti before Radharas Bihari. Panchadravida Swami had collected donations of 5 tons of dal, rice, and flour, and the devotees were regularly cooking enough khichdi to serve 125 people free prasadam daily. In the evening, Prabhupada himself would give out halwa from the deity's plate, and the crowd, including well-to-do businessmen and their wives, would press forward to receive the prasadam. Prabhupada liked the festival so much that he told the devotees to arrange to keep the tent for a perpetual festival. Prabhupada lived on the land in a tent, just like the other devotees, until a Mr. Acharya, one of the more favorable tenants living in the back of the property, invited him to stay at his home. Within a few days of his arrival at Juhu, Prabhupada was ready to hold the groundbreaking and cornerstone laying ceremony, another tactic for securing possession of the land. But it was more than a tactic, as he wanted a temple constructed as soon as possible. Radha Ras Bihari should not remain standing in a tent, but should be protected by a silver and teakwood simhasan on a marble altar. They should be surrounded by deities of the two gopis, Lalita and Vishaka, and their temples should have marble domes more than 100 feet high. Thousands should come daily for darshan and prasadam. One morning, in the midst of the festival activities, the devotees of Hare Krishna land joined Prabhupada in a simple cornerstone laying ceremony. They had dug a deep ceremonial pit and surrounded it with bricks. Prabhupada descended and placed the deity of Shesha. Then, sitting on a simple platform, Prabhupada accompanied the kirtan by playing a brass gong, while one of the devotees came before him and threw dirt into the pit, filling it with smoke and filling it while smoke rose from the sacrificial fire. Prabhupada was outraged that Brahmanand Swami had agreed to pay the contractors 40,000 rupees for the pandal construction. It was the same old thing, the foolish Western disciples getting cheated. Prabhupada refused to pay. 4,000 rupees should be more than enough. When the contractors came to see him, he told them that he had little money and that they would have to be satisfied with 4,000 rupees. They protested, but Prabhupada became angry and insisted, accept it. You're making 500% profit. As soon as they see us, Prabhupada said later, they say, these Americans, they've got money. Our work is going on in India, but as soon as money is being spent, 50% is being spoiled because you Americans are inexperienced. What can be done? The Indians want your money and they cheat like anything. During the Pandal festival, the tenement neighbors had become disturbed by kirtans over the loudspeaker. They were already disturbed by the landlord, Mr. N, were slow to repair the buildings and would sometimes let them go a full week without water before fixing the plumbing. Being suddenly forced to live with more than 20 American devotees only exacerbated their dissatisfaction. Some of the neighbors were converted Christians and unsympathetic to Vaishnavism. They even feared the children might again be converted to Hinduism. Some tenants claimed the devotees were infringing on their privacy. Some criticized the devotees for arguing among themselves, and others criticized that the unmarried men and women were living in close proximity, even though in separate quarters. A few neighbors, however, could see that the Western Vaishnavas were struggling to sincerely worship Radha and Krishna. None of the tenants criticized Prabhupada, however, so when he was present, he was able to pacify them and resolve any disagreements. But Prabhupada knew that after he left, the situation could easily become volatile. Prabhupada was planning an extensive world tour, traveling eastward to Australia, Japan, Hawaii, the US, and perhaps Mexico and Europe. It might be as long as half a year before he would return to India, and he wanted things to progress smoothly in Bombay without him. A few days before Prabhupada's departure, Madhudvisa Swami complained, I'm not feeling very enthusiastic here. I think I need a change. Prabhupada asked him where he wanted to go, and Madhudvisa replied that he was thinking of Australia. Prabhupada said, yes, I'm going there. You also come. Brahmanand Swami told Prabhupada that the preaching was deteriorating in Nairobi in his absence, and Prabhupada agreed that he should return to his duties there. Again, Prabhupada had to choose a new Bombay manager, and this time he chose Giriraj, a young brahmachari and leading preacher, in making ISKCON life members. Prabhupada reasoned that since the essence of management was to collect donations and make life members, and since Giriraj was expert at that, then even though he was young and otherwise inexperienced, he had the most important qualifications. Prabhupada had already found Giriraj to be simple and submissively dedicated to helping him develop Hare Krishna land. Giriraj. Srila Prabhupada said, you will do, Giriraj? So I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, whatever you say. I wasn't actually very happy about it, but I understood that one should be surrendered to the spiritual master, and whatever he said, one should do. So I accepted. Prabhupada said that good management meant that whatever needs doing, you do it. That's all. Later, I went in to see Srila Prabhupada, and he was sitting behind his desk. He said, now the full responsibility is on you. I winced when he said that because I wasn't used to taking responsibility. During Prabhupada's stay in Bombay, Hans Keelman, a young architect from Holland, had come to hear the lectures and had become interested in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada convinced Hans to become a devotee and help build the Hare Krishna city in Bombay. Under Prabhupada's direction, Hans at once began to make architectural drawings for the buildings. Hans, Prabhupada said, "Now you listen carefully. Lord Krishna has sent you here. You must design these temples for him. You must do these very sincerely and not be afraid." I was completely surrendered. That moment was really ecstasy for me. He had a pile of photographs on his desk, and he gave them to me and said, "Look at this." I looked at the pictures, and they were photographs of the new Govindaji temple in Vrindavan. He said, "I want you to make a design like this." So I asked him, "How big, Srila Prabhupada?" He gave me a piece of typing paper and said I should draw on this paper. Then he gave me the photographs and a pencil and a ruler. He took me to the next room and told me to sit down at the table. Pradyumna was there with all his Sanskrit books. Shamsundar was there typing the letters, and suddenly I was in between making the drawings. Prabhupada said Giriraj and the others would have to collect 64 lakhs of rupees for the construction. The devotees had no idea how they would raise even a fraction of that amount, but Prabhupada gave them some ideas. He talked to them about enlisting the support of influential men using the Petnama system, whereby a person purchases the use of a guest room for life, and there were other ways. But the immediate step was to get the land. They had possession of the land, but before building, they should have the deed. Since Mr. N was already overdue in delivering the deed, Prabhupada told Giriraj to press him to comply with the written agreement and deliver the deed at once. In Prabhupada's last lecture in Bombay, he spoke about the six Goswamis of Vrindavan and the bittersweet ecstasy of their hankering to be with Krishna. Some of Prabhupada's disciples took it that Prabhupada was speaking about this because he was himself going to be leaving for a long time. At the airport the next day, there was a joyful farewell. As Prabhupada waited for his flight to Australia, sitting in the VIP lounge surrounded by devotees, Prabhupada watched Madhudvisa Swami lead an ecstatic kirtan. "If you go on having kirtans like this," Prabhupada told the devotees, "our Bombay project would be successful." When Prabhupada saw Mrs. N had come, he exclaimed, "Oh, Mrs. N, you're also here. You're becoming one of us." And Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sorry, I'll just put this up. We'll be moving on to the verse for today. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yadi atra na svarga sukhavasheshitam svistasya suktasya kirtasya shobhanam tena janabe smritimaj janmana sayad varshe harir yad bhajatam samtanoti. Would someone else also like to read the verse?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I am trying.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yaddatra na sarga sukho vashishitam shishtasya suktasya kritasya shobhanam tena janabhe sniti maja janmana syat varshe harirjad bhajatam sam antanoti. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Mataji.
thank you. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yadyatana sargasukhavasheshitam svistasya suktasya kritasya shobhanam tena janabhe shriti majjanmana sad varshe horir yad bhajatam samtanoti. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Bhakta Dandavat Pranam.
Krishna Mataji, Danvat Pranam.
Yadyatra na swarga sukhavasheshitam swishtasya suktasya kritasya shobhanam tena ajanabhe अजनाभे स्मृतिमज जन्मनाशयात् वर्षे हरिरयत भजताम समतनोति. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
You, Krishna. And then we'll move on to word by word translation. Yadi, if, atra, in this heavenly planet na of us, Swarga Sukha Aveshishitam, whatever remains after the enjoyment of heavenly happiness, Su istasya, of a perfect sacrifice, Su uktasya, of diligently studying the Vedic literature, Kritasya, of having performed a kind act, Sobhanam, the resultant actions, Tena, by such a resultant action, Ajanabhe, in the land of Bharatvarsh, Smriti Mat Janma, a birth enabling one to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. Na, of us, Syat, let there be, Varshe, in the land, Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yat, wherein, Bhajatam, of the devotees, Sam Tanorti, expands the auspiciousness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We're now living in the heavenly planets, undoubtedly, as a result of our having performed ritualistic ceremonies, pious activities, and yagnas, and having studied the Vedas. However, our lives here will one day be finished. We pray that at that time, if any merit remains from our pious activities, we may again take birth in Bharatvarsh as human beings able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind that he personally comes to the land of Bharatvarsh and expands the good fortune of its people. Purport: it is certainly as a result of pious activities that one takes birth in the heavenly planets, but from those planets one must nevertheless come down again to earth. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Shine Punya Martya Lokam Vishanti. Even the demigods must return to earth to work like ordinary men when the results of their pious activities expire. Nevertheless, the demigods desire to come to the land of Bharatvarsh if even a small portion of the merits of their pious activities remains. In other words, to take birth in Bharatvarsh, if even a small portion of the merits in other words, to take birth in Bharatvarsh, one must perform more pious activities than the demigods. In Bharatvarsh, one is naturally Krishna conscious, and if one further cultivates his Krishna consciousness, by the grace of Krishna, he certainly expands his good fortune by becoming perfect in Krishna consciousness and very easily going back home, back to Godhead. In many other places in the Vedic literature, it is found that even the demigods want to come to this land of Bharatvarsh. A foolish person may desire to be promoted to the heavenly planets as a result of his pious activities, but even the demigods from the heavenly planets want to come to Bharatvarsh and achieve bodies that may be very easily used to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeatedly says, Bharata bhumite hoila manushya janmayara, janma sarthaka kari kara para upakara. A human being born in the land of Bharatvarsh has a special prerogative to develop Krishna consciousness. Therefore, those already born in Bharatvarsh should take lessons from the Shastras and Guru and should fully take advantage of the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to be fully equipped with Krishna consciousness. By taking full advantage of Krishna consciousness, one goes back home, back to Godhead. Yanti mad yajino apimam. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore spreading this facility to human society by opening many, many centers all over the world so that the people may associate with the pure devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement, understand the science of Krishna consciousness, and ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. I'll stop sharing my screen. So Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatho Jayam Udirayet Shinmatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanam Hridiyantastohiya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. So this is sort of getting to the conclusion of chapter 19 of the fifth canto, where initially it started with mapping out the universe for us. And with this specific verse, it's revealing that even the most powerful, beautiful, and long-lived beings in the universe, the demigods, they feel unsatisfied in heavens, and they'd rather take birth on earth in Bharatvarsh, and just so they could have any little merit that they have, as the verse says, that could be used to worship the lotus feet of the Lord. And basically they're looking down at us from a celestial height and wanting to have desperately what we have. And the demigods, their life is basically described as Svarga Sukha, or Svarga Sukha, whatever remains after the enjoyment of heavenly happiness. And if I guess we compare this to our modern language, one of the examples that could work is that this entire universe, it could be compared to this long haul flight. And these heavenly planets, they could be like first class or business class, with all the lie flat seats and the noise canceling headphones. And basically some sort of every luxury that is possible, 35,000 feet above ground. And Earth, in that comparison with, the daily suffering and issues and all that, we see how that often feels like economy class, where it feels cramped, turbulence, spotty service, and we are also constantly bumped by this luggage of material happiness, or material responsibility, sorry. And materially, the instinct is to work for that upgrade. We think that, just more money, work hard, better house, smoother life, we would be happy. We're basically driven by this status, by this greed for what's next, what's next. But these demigods who are already sitting in that first class, they are sounding an alarm, and they're basically saying that regardless of, however much legroom there is, however much more luxury there is, a cell is still a cell. So it's still inside a metal tube of 35,000 feet in the air, and we're still moving within the atmosphere of the material world. So it doesn't mean that it's transcended out beyond the material world, or and either way, one isn't home yet. So similarly in the Brahma Samhita, where the world is called a prison, and the cell, it could be made of iron, it could be made of gold, but either way, it's still confinement. It's still not being outside in a garden of, flowers and birds and butterflies. And being in this heavenly planets, or this first class or business class, it's considered to be spiritually dangerous, because one may get too comfortable that it's easy to fall into a deep unconscious sleep deep unconscious sleep, and forgetting that the flight is temporary, forgetting the destination. But in Earth, as the demigods look down, it's this discomfort that keeps us awake, that reminds us again and again that this is not where we are meant to be. And all of this discomfort is telling us that this discomfort, or this turbulence of birth, death, old age, and decease, is basically us checking that flight tracker, saying, how many more minutes left? How do I get out of here? And how do we actually land properly? So the demigods, they are praying to come down to earth, because they realize that this material comfort, it is sedative. And it's easier to just stay awake in the disturbances, because in that case, one may still be able to remember Krishna at every step, hopefully. And if not, then at least, sorry, just as the purport said, but even the demigods from the heavenly planets want to come to Bharatvarsh and achieve bodies that may be very easily used to cultivate Krishna consciousness. And the verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, a human being born in the land of Bharatvarsh has special prerogative to develop Krishna consciousness. So one other thing actually to mention is that it does talk about Bharatvarsh, but now with Srila Prabhupada building ISKCON, a Krishna consciousness, all around the world, or like all in every different country. So Bharatvarsh doesn't necessarily need to be India. It could be all of these places where there are, ISKCON, where there are ISKCON centers and all. So that's why it's considered the earth. And so the first urgency to come down is because they realize that all of this material luxury that we have, that is a sedative, and it's easier to remember Krishna when you're actually on the earth instead of the heavenly planets. And the second reason of their urgency is because this ticket or this fuel, it seems to be running out. This heavenly life, it's purchased with this punya, this pious merit, and it's considered finite, and there's no way of topping up. So basically, it's being on that same flight, same airline, but that our airline is charging us by the minute, and that bank balance is ticking down to zero. And it's basically sort of a currency that cannot be topped up. We can just watch it decrease, but it can't be topped up. And that's why what the demigods here are doing is that they're basically being strategic and saying that if there's any leftover charge on my card, leftover change on my card, or any tiny bit of merit remaining, please don't use it for any other luxury or anything on this flight, but just use this last bit of card to land at the arrivals gate of Bhakti or of Bharatvarsh. And instead of using, this little credit that they have to either rebook for another million years of pleasure, they'd rather land, and once they land at the arrivals gate, where so this verse, it mentions Ajnabe, the land of Bharatvarsh, and its word-to-word translation. They have this desire to land only in this specific location is because Earth is considered to be the only place in the universe where one can change the seat. And in the higher planets, one consumes results of what happens. In the lower planets, there's anyway so much suffering that they can come back to Earth and think that they can come back to Earth and try and rechange what's happening, just so they're not, going back down to this lower planet again. So on Earth, one can perform sadhana or choose a new destination. And also, because there's the personal presence of Hari Yad Bhajatam Samtanurti, as this verse says, which again, Hari Yat Bhajatam of the devotee. So Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yat, wherein, Bhajatam of the devotees, Samtanurti, expands the auspiciousness. So the Lord personally comes here. Along with that, and he also sends representatives, such as Srila Prabhupada's Shakta Vaishya avatars. And the demigods, they also pray for Smriti Maj Janma, a birth of remembrance, where good fortune is not actually being born with a silver spoon in the mouth, but it's being born with Mahamantra on the tongue. And once we get off this plane, we don't take down any luxury or anything of that with us. The only one baggage that can be taken off the plane is the Mahamantra. that we have. Another analogy that we could use is this banking system of the universe, where there's sort of like a heavenly gift card. And when any pious acts are performed, then a gift card is given, and a gift card has a certain amount, could be 1 million joy credits. And once one gets to heaven, then they start swiping, swiping, swiping. But the same gift card, it can't be reloaded again. So it can only just be consumed. It can only just be decreased in credit. And it gets to a point where one doesn't really know what the actual credit is that they have. And if this transaction, once it hits zero, then they're sent back to Earth. So what the demigods are saying, that even if there's one small charge or anything that's left, instead of using it, instead of consuming it, let that be used to send us back to Earth, where we can remember Krishna. And similarly on Earth, instead of this debit card, they use a credit card. Oh, sorry, instead of a gift card, they use a debit card, which is connected to this infinite source of Krishna. And every time one chants Hare Krishna, one studies the Srimad Bhagavatam, then there's no spending on that card. It's depositing. And even in Krishna and Bhagavad Gita 240, on this path, there's no loss or diminution. So basically, the balance never expires. It gets passed on, even at the time of death. So again, the demigods, they're being strategic. They're saying that this heavenly gift card, if it's about to expire, just take these last few cents and buy me a human body on Earth. And instead of living on this temporary gift card, temporary credit card, we want to start building this eternal balance, start building the actual proper assets. And instead of being just a tourist in heaven and in this world of enjoyment, it's being a resident of the spiritual world. So we often complain about this economic class problems of life, the bills, health, stress. But according to this verse, these problems basically could become our greatest assets, because they stop us from getting too comfortable in a world that isn't our home. And where we are sort of seated, or where we are situated, the demigods are standing in line, waiting for a seat, and they want the human body, they want the ability to chant, they want the access to Srimad Bhagavatam, whereas the whole world is running behind this. There's this rat race towards happiness without actually defining what this happiness is. And we desire one thing, get that one thing, move on to the next thing. Finding that the true happiness is not in the final thing that we find. And again, there's also so much hamster on the wheel for status and wealth. But when we also see that the demigods have it all, the demigods look down and see that they want what we have. So a cell, no matter how luxurious, it's still a cell, but the person behind that cell is looking and wanting to be more like the person who's outside of that cell, who's out in the garden with the flowers, the butterflies, and this. And we may be in that garden with the flowers, the butterflies, and in that case, we also have to remind ourselves that, yes, we're in this garden and we are focused on pulling out the weeds, but we also should stop and smell the flowers. And if we have the holy name, then we're holding a debit card with infinite balance, and the demigods are looking at the account and amazed. So yes, these are all the points that I have for today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much. Very nice class today. And
Thank you.
explaining the verse so nicely. So thank you once again for your class. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you for the
Mataji.
class. It leaves a very light-hearted and inspiring state of mood after listening for your class.
Thank you.
So often we do not appreciate what we have and just, as you said, concentrating on some everyday troubles which Maya Mahamaya brings us here. That's her ultimate aim here, to turn us away from her back to Krishna, and that will be not smart just to constantly digging in these problems instead of looking up and see the ultimate purpose and see how lucky and fortunate we are that we have the holy name and that we know the purpose, and at least we know where to look when we are getting so absorbed, and just it makes an effort to distract our mind from the troubles and look to our purpose and to our advantage in this life, what we already have, and how fortunate and how much of unconditional mercy we've got from Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Pranams. Very, very nice class, Krishna Mataji. It was, I loved your analogies, the flight analogy and the gift card analogy.
Thank you.
Because it makes it so relatable when you have these analogies. So thank you very much. Very well put together class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So I think we can end here, Avicharan Prabhuji and Nanraj Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I think if there is no other person to make comments, yes, it appears there is no other person to make comments. So thank you once again for your nice class, and the class may be concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha
Namo
Krishna
Namo
Namo Namo.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Her Grace Krishna Kanta
Srila
Mataji ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari.
Hari Hari Bol.